Good evening, dandies. Welcome to Undetermined, the podcast.
Here we go.
All right, man. So we tonight are talking to Mr. Coby Ellison.
Woohoo!
Coby, man, so glad to have you on. And saying earlier, I've been picking your brain the last couple of days and talking to you, but we hooked up with you through Seven Black from Headlight Rivals. Told me you need to talk to this guy. He's lived an incredible life, got a lot of really great stories, and we've been yammering for the last couple of days off the show, but man, I agree with him. Interesting stuff. So Coby is man, I'll let you tell your own story, but curator, metal artist, beat maker, and a Missouri native as well, which is cool. We love to feature that. Tell us a little bit about that, man. Like, where are you from?
I grew up in Kansas City, suburb of Kansas City. Lived there all the way up through high school. Moved away, went to K-State in Manhattan.
Okay.
And then actually after I graduated, I was supposed to move out to LA with a buddy that I met at an art school up in Maine. And that fell through. I had been working to move out to LA with this dude. And like I said, that fell through. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to stay in the Midwest. And that was right when the whole Seattle music scene was blowing up. And I literally loaded up my truck and moved up to Seattle without a place to live, without a job, without...
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And, but it was one of the best mistakes or the best decisions I ever made. Yeah. And, no, it all worked out. I mean, that's where I met my wife. That's where I saw a lot of great music, and everything I wanted that experience to be pretty much came to fruition. And then I was only up there for a couple of years, and then K-State asked me to come back and teach and work on my master's degree. So I asked my girlfriend, now wife of over 27 years, if she wanted to come back to Kansas, and she was like, what the fuck?
What?
But she and her daughter agreed, and the rest is history, I guess. Went back to Kansas, and then after I finished my master's degree, we moved to Tucson, and then eventually we moved back to the Midwest, where I'm living now in St. Louis. So, and we dig it. Wow. Anyway, that's the short story.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it was nice having you on, man.
Very short part of it. Yeah, thanks for coming. Have a good night, everybody.
It's an honor.
No, but man, I mean, Seven told me, and we've been talking for a couple of days, but man, you've been in the music scene and since you were just a kid, man. Were you like 15, did you say, when you were in mental crisis that time? 15 years old.
Yep.
Yeah.
Met at a DeCroixson house show. There was a record store over in Westport on Westport Road called Rock. I went in there to buy some records. My mom took me down there from the suburbs, and the guy who owned the store was this guy named Dave Dirk, and he's like, "Hey, DeCroixson's doing a house show," and it was down by UMKC, and he's like, it's kind of an invite only, but I think that you would dig it. And I knew of DeCroixson from Thrasher. There was a whole thing on skate rock and stuff like that. And I was a hardcore skater then even. And so I called a buddy and I said, hey, let's go down to this DeCroixson show. So we went down there, and we went down there early, and there were these other young kids. So that was the thing about the Kansas City punk scene back then. There weren't a lot of kids. There was a lot of older people.
Older dudes,
And so I kind of felt, and we couldn't go to, over 21 gigs and stuff. And the only places that we could really go were like the VFW hall or, South, like that. And so I saw these guys skating down the sidewalk, and we because we recognized we were about the same age, and we started talking, and they were like, do you play any instruments? And I'm like, well, I play guitar. I've been playing guitar since I was about 8 or 9, not great, but I can play.
Right.
And they were like, well, we're from Raytown. And I'm like, well, I live in Lee Summit, which is close. I mean, if you know,
they're neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, you want to start a band? And I'm like, yeah.
Awesome.
And they're like, when do you want to start? And I said, next week. And so we didn't have a drummer or anything. But the bass player and I hooked up, and we just started kind of writing songs. And then we eventually got a drummer. And next thing you know, we eventually got a drummer. My mom would drop me off at this friend's house every morning on her way to work. We would practice almost like every day. And I mean, here's 15-year-old kids, but that's what we wanted to do,
Yeah.
And we eventually got enough material together that we were asked to play a gig at the VFW Hall. And our first gig was with the Replacements and Scream.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That didn't even come up in our conversation.
Holy shit. How does that happen?
Yeah.
Well, I knew the promoters. I mean, I've been going to shows, and I knew the guys that were putting on the shows. Well, one of the guys, that guy from Rock Therapy that, told me about the D. Croyton show in the first place. And they were like, hey, they thought it was kind of, I don't want to say a novelty act, but we were so different then. We identified as straight edge at the time.
Okay.
We were really wanting to bring a sound that we were into that wasn't really available in Kansas City at the time. We were more like the SSD Control, the Negative Approach, and Septic Death, and that kind of like real aggressive hard sound. And so, and I, like I said, I knew these guys, and they were like, you guys want to play? And we're like, yeah. And then it just kind of turned into something else. Still just kept kind of going forward. And we eventually, one weekend while my parents were out of town, we moved all the furniture out of the living room. We went down to Radio Shack and bought this realistic 4-channel mixer.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Hooked it up to a cassette player and recorded our demo in my parents' living room. And the thing is that was kind of cool is the guy who was the singer is this guy named Matt. And Matt, you may know him from, he has a couple of businesses now in Westport. He owns Mid-Century Modern, and he owns the Soap Bar.
Okay.
But he was very entrepreneurial even then. He had his own fanzine. He had this whole thing. I mean, he had this work ethic of like, if we're going to do this, we're not just going to be a bunch of kids like jacking around in a band. We'd go to Kinko's, we'd make stickers. We were doing this whole thing. And anyway, so we recorded this demo and we sent it off to Maximum Rock and Roll. Lo and behold, Pusshead reviewed it for us. And as high school kids that were in the skate scene and having Pusshead review it, and it was a good review, it was just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Then the orders started coming in. And he and I, as the orders came in, we had split them up. And we were literally duping them on a straight, like, cassette player.
Like dual cassette.
Like this,
And I can't even imagine how many hundreds of those tapes we duped off. But the word got out in this weird way. Even though when I look back at it now, it's pretty generic thrash. But at the time, this is 84.
Still, it's still kind of novelty at that point.
Yeah, and thrash really was, there weren't as many bands. And especially, that time. In retrospect, I can see what you're saying in hindsight, but especially like from the Midwest.
We're from the Midwest, and here we're 15-year-old kids talking about alcohol is going to ruin their life, and skating, whatever. But for whatever reason, it kind of people took notice. and we were going up to Lincoln and playing up in Lincoln. Lincoln had a really cool scene at the time because there were a lot of young kids up there, and we felt more like we were within our brethren or our family or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we struck up some really good friends up in Lincoln, and then when the Lincoln bands would come to Kansas City, we always opened up for them. And then we decided that we needed a tour.
How do you sell that to your parents at 15 years old?
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, my stepdad talked my mom into it.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a stand-up cat.
And think about it. I mean, this is like pre-internet. This is pre any of that. We booked this tour through Connections and Maximum Rock and Roll, and we basically just hit the road. And ironically enough, we had a friend that's mom owned a Montessori school, and she was out of the country, and this was during the summer. And so we talked him into letting us borrow the Montessori van.
Right.
And there were only like a couple of us that even had driver's license.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
God, geez. And only been on the road probably months. And it's like, yeah, let's go across the country. Yeah.
No, it was a short tour. It was a short one. Yeah, we hit Lincoln, we hit Omaha, we hit Minneapolis, where we opened up for COC. And
oh wow.
Fuck.
Yeah, that was on the Eye for an Eye tour too. But we already knew them when they played Kansas City, and we hooked up with them just out of just being mutual kind of music things. Because by then we were already starting to get into metal, and we were listening to Venom, and I was going back and listening to like old Judas Priest and Sabbath and stuff like that. And we met Reed Mullen, who was the drummer for COC, and he's like, dude, you guys need to check out Slayer. You need to check out Metallica and Trouble and all this stuff. And we're just like, oh my God. And that totally changed our life. And that's another story.
Backing up just a second, did you even when you like opened for the Replacements and Scream and stuff, did you understand the gravity? Of course, they weren't as big then as they are now, but did you understand the gravity of those guys you were opening for at the time?
Yeah, we knew about Scream. I wasn't really into the Replacements so much, because I kind of thought of them as being kind of the older college rock crowd.
Right.
But we knew that they were going to bring people in.
Right. That's not a pairing that I would automatically place in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Kind of a limited pool, really,
Well, that's true.
Ironically enough, William Burroughs was there too.
Huh. We just talked about him.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
That's weird.
John Hasty, because and we often forget about all the time he spent,
he was
Lawrence. Yeah. I remember I went my first year in college. I was at KU, and I remember seeing him at the grocery store with cat litter and a bunch of like tabloid magazines.
Yeah.
So, did you happen to listen to our John Hasty episode?
I have not.
Yeah, he's from Nonagon. He owned a bookstore in Lawrence, or co-owned a bookstore in Lawrence. And I guess Burroughs used to come in there all the time, and he would buy, like, they had to make sure that in stock they had Cat Fancy magazine and like gun magazines. Because they were like, if they didn't have those things in stock, they knew, even though they were like more of an alternative bookstore, they knew that they would lose this business.
Actually, ironically, I did listen to that.
That was a hilarious story. But wow. So going on, getting turned on to Slayer, getting turned on to Metallica, and
hanging out with Burroughs. Did you have any interactions with him?
Not really, other than I thought he was like this creepy old man.
Right. Yeah,
I could see that.
Yeah, at that age, especially. Yeah.
And I had never really heard an old man say motherfucker.
Yeah.
So we went on this tour, and it was cool. I mean, and the thing that was really cool about like playing with COC, and it was in Minneapolis, and it was at this youth center, and the crowd was nuts. It was really fun. And they split the door with us 50-50.
Oh
wow, that's cool. Generous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
That's amazing.
Saved our ass because we were at a point where we didn't know if we were going to be able to make it to Green Bay.
Right. All right. Wow. How many were in the crowd that I'm not sure.
Maybe 100.
Yeah.
But
was that intimidating to you at all?
No, not at all. No.
Yeah.
Not at all. I mean, it was just the whole environment was very welcoming. It was very youth oriented. The woman who booked the show was this woman named Michelle Strauss. And if you've seen the hardcore documentary on Minneapolis, she's prominently in it. And no, it was cool. And it was cool to hang out with the Corrosion of Conformity guys too, because they were just always cool. And like I said, then we went to Green Bay. The cops shut us down for loudness. And I think by then we were ready to just kind of come home.
Sure.
Yeah.
Did it ever occur to you, like at that age, like this isn't normal, that it like plays out this smoothly?
Yeah, or that you get those breaks.
What do you mean?
Well, it's just the steps and like getting the just getting those gigs and getting those opening for those bands and moving on opening for bigger bands, or
right, and getting great reviews, and suddenly everybody's wanting to buy your tape, and
right.
I mean, we were pretty humble. I mean, it wasn't like we had big heads or anything like that. We were all we were interested in is making music and skating, and we knew, I guess, that we were doing something different in Kansas City at the time, and so we just kind of stuck to our guns. I mean, we were a pretty close-knit group. I mean, being the only straight edge band, in Kansas City, we kind of kept to ourselves for the most part. And we just kind of did our thing. And then they would ask, different promoters would ask us to play. I mean, we opened up for the Offenders. We opened up for Crucifix. We opened up for BGK and Cause for Alarm. We opened up for, eventually I don't know if I mentioned the Necros.
Okay.
And that was the thing that was kind of funny, is when we came back from tour, we thought we were hot shit.
Sure. I would have.
Yeah, I guess that was sort of my the tail end of my question and what Matt's saying. Just like, did it go to your head that?
Not really, but we knew that we were not going to be just some kids. I mean, by then I was playing through 2 stacks on the other side, on one side of the stage, or 2 sides of the stage.
Yeah.
And so we were loud. We knew that we had this kind of thing going on, but being on tour, we came back, we thought, we're kind of hot shit, but we weren't like braggers about it. It was just like, we knew that we had taken it to another level.
Yeah. Well, you definitely did. That's kind of amazing, especially considering how young you were.
Yeah.
And
And
it was in an era where it's really hard to get noticed. Today you can throw your shit on the internet and, find an audience. But at that time, wow, that's a challenge.
Well, what's kind of cool too then is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with a tape label that was out of, I think, San Diego, called Bad Compilation Tapes. And they would have these compilation tapes that came out from bands all over the world. And I think we were on 2 of them. And
nice.
Then when I was doing some kind of research for this interview to kind of figure out what Mental Crisis became, I remembered that we were on a compilation out of Finland. We were on a compilation out of Norway. And one of those compilations was then reissued out of France. And then I looked on discogs.com, and the Mental Crisis tapes are going for $75 a piece.
Wow.
Crazy. And I've had people, like, over the last probably 10 years, I think, this resurgence of like what was punk like or hardcore like back in the day. I've had people reach out to me and say, like, hey, can I get a Mental Crisis tape or whatever? And obviously we don't have them, but I've been sending them MP3s.
Right.
Oh,
right. Well, I've still got a dual cassette player if you need to borrow it.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I was just messaging to Matt last night. And I'm like, dude, do a reissue, and we can sell them at 30, and
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, once you start doing those reprints, and the price goes down when you flood the market. It's kind of like De Beers and their diamond stocking.
Yeah, there was talk about 7 years ago. This dude had expressed interest, and he had run a minor label, mostly like crust bands. He was from Kansas City, and there was a band from Kansas City called Choke. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them.
Oh, yes, it sounds familiar, but yeah.
They were pretty hardcore. They were a different scene than us. They were like, if we were straight edge, they were the exact opposite. But they were really intense live. And he was wanting to put out a split vinyl of Mental Crisis on one side. And we actually remastered the Mental Crisis stuff for this. And then he was going to have Choke on one side, Mental Crisis on the other. And then it just kind of fell off on the way. But so yeah, that's the Mental Crisis stuff, I guess.
Mental Crisis story. So the band just basically just split up eventually, or had different interests and
time for college.
Yeah, well, not really for us, because I was still in high school, and so Matt and I then started like a thrash band that was kind of a cross between thrash and like maybe Celtic Frost or something like that.
Okay.
But that never really went anywhere. I mean, but it was still something for us to do, but we had visions of like, okay, we're moving on, but it just never happened. But yeah, the other people in the band, they were into it, but they weren't as into it as we were. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, yeah, things just kind of fell apart, and that was fine. But Matt went on to be in Germbox. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them. They were a big Kansas City band.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah,
I am now. Yeah, you turned me on to them.
He switched over and started playing drums, and he played in Germbox. Then he played in this band called Quitters Club, and he played in another band called Miniseries. Yes. And then he was really involved in a lot of like weird improv stuff, where a lot of these, they would literally show up at his house and people would throw a number in a hat and pull out a number, and that's who you were playing with that night.
Oh, cool.
And he was really all that. And, and like I said, I still talk to him probably every day.
Yeah. Matt, remind me, by the way, after the show to send you some links to that Quitters Club shit. It's really good shit.
All right. Cool.
I hadn't heard of them before, but Coby threw me on them a couple of days ago. I was like, wow, I can't believe I hadn't heard that gem. But yeah, it's good stuff.
It's heavy.
Yeah, it is. So you go on past that, and so when did you go to college? Did you go as college aged?
I went as college. I went as college age right out of high school, and did the 4 years. I was good. Did the 4 years. And then, like I said, that's when I graduated and moved up to Seattle. And
did you start out as an art major? Was that your plan?
Oh, absolutely. I knew that when I was in high school. I knew that's what I was going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, there was no question. I didn't give a shit if I wasn't going to make money or whatever. I knew that's what I was going to do. So.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when you got to know Seven, I'm assuming, since he's in Manhattan.
Yep, absolutely. His brother and I were the only printmaking majors in the university at the time.
Small group, yeah.
And I mean, there were other people in classes, but he and I were the only two majors in printmaking.
Okay.
And Seven would come in to kind of just hang. And if I recall, he had like a devil's lock at the time.
That sounds right.
And we just kind of talked music. And I remember later, like as he would hang out, I'd be like, dude, have you ever heard like Mudhoney or Green River or Garden and shit like that? And kind of turned him on to all that, because I was into that like big time at that point. I guess I was listening to that and rap. That's all.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I moved up to Seattle and got to see some really, really awesome bands up in Seattle that would have never come through the Midwest at the time. So that was cool.
What were some of your favorite shows at that time that you caught up there?
Godflesh Street Cleaner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fuck yeah. Now you're speaking my language. Yes, I love that fucking record.
Godflesh Street Cleaner tour, and they played with Napalm Death.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Matt Amex, a friend of ours, turned me on to Godflesh back in high school, and it was a very welcome turn on. A fucking amazing band.
Yeah. Street Cleaner. I mean, that's still one of my top favorites for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen them a couple of times since, maybe 3 or 4 times since, but it didn't have the energy or the power that I remember then. Yeah, Neurosis. I saw Neurosis Souls at Zero up in Seattle, which was absolutely bonkers because they were bringing in all these like films behind them of like these guys getting shot down in
Oh, wow.
And, you know, I mean, it was nuts.
Right.
Heather, my wife, she grew up in Seattle for the most part, and her friend owned this venue called the OK Hotel. And it was that's where like Nirvana played.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah, we lived really close to the OK Hotel at the time in Seattle, and the husband of the woman who was Heather's friend, he gave me a pass that said admitted anytime.
Oh, sweet.
So I would go down to like matinee shows to see like The Accused. I mean, it worked. It was great, you know, just to go down there and see bands. But the Godflesh show was definitely, I look back on it as probably one of the top 5 to 10 concerts in my whole life.
Nice.
Now, when you moved out there, who were you staying with? Did you have somebody stay with there to go, or just fucking couch?
You're saying you didn't have a place to live.
Okay, so that's a crazy story too. Okay, so when I moved out there, I didn't have a place to live, and I was staying in this total crack motel, and everything I owned was in the back of my Nissan or my Mazda pickup with a camper shell. It didn't lock.
Oh shit! That's just
terrifying.
I would sleep in a chair up against the window that faced my truck so that I could at least kind of keep an eye on it. But it was totally like literally crackheads and prostitutes. And I mean, it was fucked up.
Christ.
And I was driving, if you're familiar with Seattle at all, there's this area at the time that was kind of the hip area called Capitol Hill. And that's where I was looking. I would have found a place anywhere. And so I was driving down Capitol Hill, down Broadway on Capitol Hill, and I saw this dude that I was in a band with when I was in college, for freshman year in college, and he looked rough. It looked like someone had just like beat the fuck out of him.
Oh my God.
But I saw him and I was like, hey, that's Mark. And I didn't even living up there. And
weird.
I turned around and I looked for him and I couldn't find him. And I went back to my motel room that afternoon and I started going through my phone book, in my personal phone book. And I started like trying to find people that may know how to get a hold of him. And I found someone that knew how to get a hold of his mom. And so I called him and I said, hey, dude, I'm literally living in a crack motel. And, and is there any way I can stay with you? And he's like, we're living in a 1-bedroom apartment with like 4 people. All their band members were all living in this bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I don't give a fuck. I need a phone number so that if landlords can get a hold of me, at least someone's there to answer the phone. Because this is before cell phones or anything like that, you know? And so I basically took a blanket and threw it over their kitchen table and made a
fort. Man.
I slept at their kitchen table for about a week. But the thing that was really kick-ass in retrospect is, so he's like, yeah, you can stay here if you sleep under our kitchen table under the, you know, the sleeping bag as a fort. But ironically enough, Slayer was playing in Season of the Abyss tour at the Paramount Theater, which was probably about 4 or 5 blocks away. So the first night that I stayed with him, I unloaded all my shit, not my truck. I figured out a way to get rid of all that. I just had my bare essentials. And I walked down to the Paramount and saw Slayer. And
nice.
Then from there, I mean, now that I had a phone number that, like, if landlords could call, someone could at least record a phone number or whatever. I found, I was able to move into my own joint. But now you had to be a little flexible. But you know what, though? It taught me a lot, because if I basically learned if I could do that, I could move anywhere.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. When I eventually, I followed a girl up to a bigger town that I moved into. And at the time, I was just talking to a friend of mine about this online, who I haven't seen in a long time, but we were roommates, and we were 5 guys living in a studio apartment. No bedroom, just no bedroom. Like, it was an old motel that had been converted into apartments as studios. And we all 5 just like slept on the floor. And, yeah, the only way you got any privacy at all or time with your lady was like to go into the closet.
So is that when you were eating baked potatoes with nothing on?
Yeah, that was probably what you read. Yeah, that's what we had like every day for lunch. Was like we figured out we could all buy like a bag of baked potatoes for like $4 or whatever,
right?
And chip in like 70 cents for them or whatever. And we had no, maybe salt we might have had,
right?
But there was no kitchen, so the only thing we had was microwave. Everything had to be microwavable. And that's what we ate for just like days on end was, but yeah, living that way teaches you what not to do.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. The first day I was in Seattle, I went in this restaurant that was up on Queen Anne. It's called the 5 Spot. And it's like this kind of high-end diner. I mean, it's a diner, but it's high-end.
Right.
And I cooked in restaurants all through college, so I knew I could probably get a cooking job from the get-go. And, even if I was cooking at Denny's, I didn't give a fuck. And I thought, you know what? And that was the first breakfast I had in Seattle. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to start high and go from there. Yeah. And I went in and I had a resume, and the manager said, "Hey, the chef wants to talk to you." And so he interviewed me and he hired me.
Wow.
And ironically enough, one of the line cooks was this woman who we became really good friends. And we didn't want to sleep where we shit kind of thing,
Right. Mm-hmm.
And the next thing you know,
I can hear her now.
Whatever became of her? I wonder.
Yeah, now we've been married over 27 years. So.
Oh, well, that's cool.
Congratulations. Yeah, we were best friends for months, and the next thing you know,
sleep where we shat.
So yeah, we just became really good friends, and then next thing you know, we're more than that, and we've been together since. So I mean, that's, if I could say anything I brought back from Seattle, that would be it.
Nice.
Nice.
So
when did you come back from Seattle then? After that point,
that was probably 93, 94.
And you were how old then?
I would have been about 24, 25.
Okay. And you get back to Missouri, right? Or no?
I went back to Kansas.
Kansas, right.
Yeah, you taught.
Yeah, I taught. And I was working on my master's degree, and they offered like a free tuition and a teaching stipend and things like that. And it was actually a really good thing. Heather had been wanting to get out of Seattle for a while, and it was just really hard for her to do that. And this kind of forced her to do that. And, it was kind of like moving back to Mayberry.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We just kind of created this little nucleus family, because she had a 5-year-old daughter at the time. And so I basically added water and instant kid, and was the dad.
Mm.
We did that for about 3 years, and then we moved to Tucson.
Yeah. When did you start getting, I mean, you said you were always, we talked about this a bit last night about just hip hop. and rap being, like I said, to me, it was the new punk rock.
Yeah.
As far as I was concerned.
You get the NWA and
Yeah. It was, it was music about sticking it to the man, and, and it went hard. And that's what I liked about it.
Matt, who did you say?
NWA was just kind of first thing that came into my mind of just like kind of punk rock attitude in that era.
I had a buddy that owned another record store in Kansas City, and probably at about 86, 87, started kind of discovering hip hop. And I was more interested in the B-sides. I mean, there were no really at the time or anything like that. And I was interested in the B-sides because the B-sides usually had these hardcore remixes or these instrumentals and stuff like that. I really didn't give a shit about the rap so much, but I did dig the beats.
Yeah.
From there, I got into like Schoolie D and all this kind of hip hop, and that actually kind of took over what I was really listening to for a while. And there was a really great record store in what's that town? There's a town where there's an army fort outside of Manhattan.
Junction City, yeah.
Junction City.
There you go. Yep.
And there was a Radio Shack there that the owner, for whatever reason, was catering to the GIs, and he had like this massive rap section. These that were coming over, and so I'd go to Junction City, and then there was also another record store in Topeka, and I'd go down there, and I would go over there and buy records and stuff like that. And I mean, I was still buying records from other places, but I really totally jumped headfirst into all that shit. And I still stayed friends with Doug from Norris Horsepower. That's the dude that messaged you on Facebook about like, yeah. And he and I really, really got into rap music then, and I just kind of have been into it ever since. Really,
right on.
I go through phases. There's some, I kind of like for the last couple of years, I really haven't found much I've been into, but lately over the last 6 months or so, I've been finding some really cool shit. So
yeah. What have you been checking out?
Arm & Hammer is one. There's a guy that's part of Arm & Hammer. His name's Billy Woods.
Okay.
Those are two right off the top of my head that I've really kind of been digging. They've definitely been listening to Dialect.
Right.
But in its very conscious raps, not a lot of gunplay.
Right.
I don't know. It just kind of, I guess I'm at the point now where I'm like, I really would like to listen to some nice rap music or hip hop, and that it kind of hit a place where I'm like, damn, this is pretty damn good. So I've been buying that.
Yeah.
I mean, so then probably about the mid to late 80s is when I really started really getting into rap music, and I've pretty much listened to it since.
Yeah.
Off and on to some degree. I mean, sometimes, if shit's really coming out, that's like, holy fuck, this is great. And then I kind of pursue it. But then it seemed like for the last, I don't know, 8 or 10 years, there really wasn't a whole lot of shit I was really interested in, except maybe Run the Jewels or, some things here or there.
Yeah, we talk about Death Grips a little bit and a few other, I was kind of the same way, or Clipping and some of those groups.
Clipping, yeah, that's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you decide to start playing, or when did you start, decide that, hey, I'm going to make my own beats or?
That was kind of a weird story. I was working a job in Arizona where I was building museum environments and building aquariums and things like that. I mean, on a huge scale, like you would think of as like the Shed Aquarium or the Monterey Aquarium.
Wow.
And I even went over to Saudi Arabia for 6 weeks to assemble an aquarium that I built for like 2 months in Tucson. I mean, these are massive aquariums, and in natural science museums and things, really kind of high detailed stuff. And so I felt like I was using my artistic brain all day long, And so I would come home, and the last thing I wanted to do was make art, because my brain had been working that way all day, and I just was exhausted. And so I started kind of playing around with just actually toys and stuff like that. And I bought a 4-track and started miking like weird. There was a whole genre. I don't know if you guys remember this. There was a whole genre, like they'd come out with these rap toys, and they'd have like these pre-programmed beats and these little toys and stuff. And
click on it, makes like a little record scratch, like yeah.
Right. And so I started recording those, but like with massive effects and stuff like that, and just kind of playing. It wasn't anything like that I was seriously pursuing. It just gave me something to do when I got home that I felt like I was actually kind of doing something creative. And the next thing I know, I bought a Korg Poly 6 and bought a drum machine, and I started kind of playing around. And I would say the earlier stuff that I was making, it loosely, I guess, fit within a hip hop realm or a beat maker realm. It was more experimental, just like weirdo drug music. Then next thing you know, I get another synth, and then I get another small sampler, and the next thing you know, when I came back, I had a pretty good bonus, and I bought an MPC 2000 and kind of taught myself how to use that, and that's when it really became serious. At a recording studio set up in our house, and I was at that time working 4 10-hour days, and I would get up Friday morning at 6 a.m. because my schedule was already such, and I would just start making music. I just started making beats and got real serious about it. Then, but what I decided early on, once I got to that level, actually a little before that level, before I got the MPC, but I had a rig, and back then everybody was playing on laptops and shit like that.
Right.
Oh yeah. And I was like, fuck that. I'm not really interested in that. I come from a band background.
Right.
I want to play live. And I knew from the get-go, this wasn't just going to be something that sat in my house and that I was going to play live. And so I set my gear up to it was tailored towards that. And so I started playing some live gigs under the name Debbie.
Great name, by the way.
Yeah, I was not wanting to have like some hip hop name. I didn't want to have anything. Actually, Debbie comes from back in the skater days. That was a term we used to use when someone slammed really hard on a ramp. And I was known as Debbie. I slammed hard. I skated hard. I slammed hard. And so actually I was talking to Matt, the dude from Mental Crisis, and I said, hey, I think about calling this Debbie. He's like, that's fucking awesome. And it was an inside joke, but it was like such the non-hip-hop name, and
everyone loved it.
And yeah, people dug it in this weird way. It was so kind of like, what, you're going by Debbie, kind of thing.
Yeah,
I don't get it, but I like it. Yeah,
right. But my whole thing was I'm not going to play through laptops. I'm not going to play through all that shit. And so every time I played, I'd literally have to bring like 2 synths, a drum machine, my sampler, and all this gear, a rack mount that had effects processors and amps and the whole thing. And at that time, no one was doing that shit.
Yeah.
No one was doing that shit. And I played it live. I mean, I played it live. It wasn't like I just hit a button and said, here, start.
Right.
There it goes. I guess the rest is history. I mean, that's what I did. And then there were these dudes in Tucson. One of them was the IT dude at the U of A. And this is like early internet. So you got to keep this in. And he somehow created this club, in quotes, about electronic music or something like that. And he was running like remote routers out of his house. And he literally had these beer boxes with these routers and these sound cards shit all hooked together in his house.
Right.
And every Wednesday night they had what was called AZ Sessions. And it was primarily drum and bass at the time. But then have live music. Me and a couple other people would show up. I would play about every other month or so. And I'd bring all my shit over and we'd play live. But what they would do is they would play it through the internet.
Right.
So like a live stream.
Yeah, like an online gamer group, except you're doing music. Yeah,
right.
Like a LAN, like a sort of LAN group that got broadcasted.
And this was probably in the late 90s.
Wow.
When they were at, and I did a live stream, and all of a sudden I started getting these emails from these dudes that were from the Netherlands. And they were like, dude, we fucking totally love your set. Because my sets were very organic. They were really heavy, but they were really organic. And it was like music or whatever. And not just like hitting a button or DJing or whatever. And they were like, hey, let's put out a record together. And I'm like, okay. And they were really connected with the Living Legends. I don't know if you guys know who they are. They were this a hip hop collective out of San Diego, and Murs was part of that.
Yeah.
They were like, let's put out this 12-inch and a split. And like the songs I shared with you, those are all off that 12-inch.
Yeah. Good stuff.
We had them pressed in the Czech Republic, 180 gram vinyl. Before that, I was mostly putting out CDRs, and I would put out CDR probably every, 3 or 4 months. I had a different CDR. So they were kind of like mixtapes, but they weren't.
Right.
But they were new tracks. And, people were buying them and shit like that. And then when I put that out, that got, it got reviewed in Accelerator magazine and all that. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. But, by then I kind of had refined my sound as far as what I was going to do. It was kind of like this cross between weird experimental hip hop and dub and just kind of like weird psychedelic beats and shit like that.
Yeah.
But it was all played live. There was no overdubs. I would literally hit start on the recorder and then start playing. So there were no overdubs, nothing. What you heard on those recordings is what you heard live.
Yeah.
That's rare.
It is rare, especially when I'm thinking about that time frame, in the early 90s. And it was like, I was fucking around with a little bit of stuff like SF Acid and some of those programs and stuff, computers, but I can't imagine just winging it with that, especially with the lag you sometimes had and shit with it. And, trying to figure out where to, drop your cuts in and stuff was difficult for me. I mean, I could put some like basic shit together but I couldn't have possibly like played it live.
I would think though that like doing it that way gives you a little bit more of an intimate feel.
Oh, absolutely.
With it, maybe you get to understand it on a different level than somebody that's just screwing around on a laptop.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there was structure. There had to be structure to do it. And the thing is, too, is I could kind of do different stuff. I could start throwing different effects. I mean, I guess you could do that on a laptop and stuff too. But, when you're sitting there watching someone do this live, to me, that's much more interesting than watching someone play on their computer.
No, it's art in motion. Yeah. It really is.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I started doing that. And I had a pretty good reputation, especially in Tucson, for what I was doing. And everybody knew that it was, if you're going to hang out with me, it wasn't going to be your straight up fucking hip hop.
Right. Yeah.
But
and you made some connections too, talking about that time, about some of the bands you talking about, and through various means. I mean, some with mixing, some just meeting. Like that Dalek story. Told me it was hilarious about the show that they played. That was in Tucson, right? Wasn't it?
What's that?
That Dalek story of meeting them and hooking up with them. You had tell us about that. That's great.
And they're on a punk rock label, and I read about this. I read this review of the first Dialect album, and I was like, oh, this sounds exactly like something I'd be interested in, because the sound that I was doing at that time was real heavy and stuff like that.
Right.
And so I ordered it from them, and then we started exchanging emails, and I sent them a bunch of CDs, and we became, I guess, friends through the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And then Heather's birthday coincided we were in Albuquerque, and her birthday coincided with a date that they were supposed to play in Albuquerque, and there was a huge storm the night before, and they were touring with DJ Spooky, and the roof collapsed in the venue, and and they were standing out front. We went down to go to the show, and they were standing out front hawking T-shirts because they didn't have any money.
Right, you're not getting to have that gig. Yeah.
They were telling me that, like, for the last 2 days, they'd only been eating mustard and potato chip sandwiches.
Oh, shit.
So we started talking. I mean, when I introduced myself, they knew who I was and shit because of our previous conversations.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
And I was like,
we bought T-shirts.
Yeah, we bought T-shirts.
Good on you.
I said, hey, you guys want to go to dinner? And they're like, well, we don't have any money to go to dinner. And I said, it's on me. And so we found out, like, one of the best Mexican restaurants in Albuquerque, and we went and we shut that motherfucker down.
Yeah. Nice.
They were like, margaritas, keep them coming, you know. And the thing is, we were on a limited budget too, and I kept worrying that my credit card was going to fucking bounce.
Right.
But I just felt like, I was just trying to be a nice guy, and I didn't want anything in response or anything. It was just like, it was fun hanging out. And they later told me that was probably one of the most fun nights of the whole tour.
Nice.
Right on.
All right, you took them home, let them sleep under your table.
Right. And so then later on, they toured with ISIS, believe it. And they became friends with Aaron from Hydra Head. And Aaron approached them about doing a remix album. And so they contacted me, and they said, hey, do you want to do a remix? And I said, yeah. No. No,
thank you.
I don't know.
I don't think that's really something I want to do.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah.
The DJ, beat maker, musician.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent me threads to this, like, outtake of some, like, 30-second, 45-second track in between songs. And he's like, are you sure you want to do this? Said, yeah, that's the one I want to do. So sent me the threads, and I dubbed the fuck out of it.
Right.
They were happy with it and everything, but then for whatever reason, Hydra Head never put it out, which was fine, But when they came to Tucson later, a couple of years later, they stayed with us. They were touring with this band called Zoo. Are you familiar with Zoo? ZU?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're playing with Zoo. And Zoo, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. There's like 8 members in that band.
Okay.
They're these Italian guys.
Yeah. I didn't know they were Italian. I knew they were like a European group. Yeah.
And they already pulled me aside and said, these guys are freaked out on the amount of driving that we have to do between shows.
Right. Yeah.
Dialect and Zoo played, and they came back to our house. We were struggling. We lived in a small house. We were struggling, trying to figuring out where and how everybody's going to sleep in here.
Right.
And so we just lined up sleeping bags where my studio was, and they all slept in there. And then Dialect and I and the group partied for the rest of the night or whatever. But they were like, we don't have the heart to tell them that our next gig's in Austin, and it's 13 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, you told me part of that story the other night. It's astonishing, like going over to Europe. And people over there, they don't understand just how far apart shit can be. When I told people that, like, I lived in a place in the middle of nowhere in Missouri, and like to go get a gallon of milk was like a 25-mile drive, or, and took about 30 minutes. They're like, what? It's like they had relatives that they hadn't visited because they were that far away in years, just couldn't fathom that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a fun night. And I still correspond with Dalek every now and then through Facebook and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool.
No, they were good dudes. Actually, ironically enough, I think it wasn't the last time. I was traveling for my job, and I was in Indianapolis, and they were opening up for the Melvins and Tomahawk.
Oh, wow!
That's when they switched over to Ipecac Records, right? And I think around that time, because Patton had like signed them, as well as the Melvins got Melvins signed on Ipecac,
right?
And that's how they kind of. And that's actually when I first got turned on to them. But man, they're fucking amazing, man.
Have you ever seen them live?
No, I have not. I don't think I really caught them around here. Of course, by the time I got turned on to them, maybe they'd play here once or twice, and I just never saw them.
Yeah, they pretty much broke up. Octopus, he left. Their DJ, he died.
Yeah.
Dalek is still kind of doing his own thing under Dalek, but it's different.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're heavy. The thing that really sucked though is the crowd was like really not into it at all.
Yeah.
Kind of like booing them and shit like that. And I'm like, dude, this is like heavy as fuck. This is heavier than Elvin's.
Yeah, I always hate that. I mean, give everybody a chance or shut the fuck up. It's like, seeing Tricky like open for Tool. God, they were so mean to them in Memphis. I was digging the fucking show. I love Tricky. But yeah, somebody wouldn't give them a chance just because they didn't sound the same.
Well, actually, Dalek toured with Tool as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're fans of it.
I can't even imagine, because they were telling me that like they played in like Billings, Montana with Tool. Like, that would be like,
that's a story in itself.
Right. Tool's been pretty good about that, to give people chances and, try.
I agree with that. I'm not a big fan. I mean, I like maybe their first or second record, which is such a cliche to say, but I just really don't pay. There's so much other music out there that I just don't pay attention to what they're doing or whatever.
I think I find myself just less and less being a big exclusive fan. There's the more music I listen to of a certain band. Like my daughter's asking me about the other, who's your favorite band? It's like, 5 years ago, I probably could have picked one. I don't know if I can say that anymore. There's just too much to listen to.
It's harder, but I at the same time I'm enjoying it more, just because there's so fucking much out there, and I've been saying this all the time. People, if you think music's boring and there's nothing out there, you are not trying.
You're not looking hard enough.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a time I was spending hundreds of dollars a month on fucking music, and I don't anymore. But what's so crazy? You don't. What's so crazy is like, I can get on YouTube, and mostly what I'm listening to anymore is I listen to metal, and I listen to like weird prog or proto metal that never made it over to the States from Europe. And I'll find some YouTube video, and then I'll jump over on Amazon, or I'll jump over somewhere, and I can just buy it.
Right.
And it's so weird, because I used to dig and dig and dig through records, and I just don't have the patience for it anymore. And I don't know if I've just kind of burned myself out or whatever. I mean, I used to literally like make a side trip to dig through records, and now like, oh, there's this record from Sweden from the 1973, and I can buy it. And I'll from some record store in Germany, and it's here in like 4 days.
Huh? Yeah, it's crazy.
Right. It's going to be more expensive than the $2 I would spend if I found it in the bin, but
but you're going to. That's the thing, is because it never made it over here.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's that, but I don't buy like I used to, and pretty much like I said, all I'm buying is like weird prog and proto metal, and then I have my labels that I follow.
Right.
Next question.
I'm still processing all of this so far. It's a lot.
No, I mean, sort of related to that. So, I mean, you get out of making music a little bit, go into more making art this time. Is that right? Fair to say?
Well, it was really interesting. As soon as I stopped having a job that kind of pulled my brain out of making visual art, I got a job. I was basically the department head at an art college in Arizona, teaching and writing curriculum and stuff like that. And as soon as I kind of got in that mode, I immediately started making visual art again.
Yeah.
And I still dabbled in music, and I still played music and stuff like that, and I still took it seriously. But it was really refreshing for me. I was like, okay, I've done this. And now I can start making visual art again. It was right when the whole Bush Jr.
W.
Yeah, was, gearing up to be a war hawk. And I started really doing a lot of research and reading and contemplating about colonialism and what our role is in a country and politics. I started writing poetry, believe it or not, which I'd never done before. And then that poetry translated into this body of work.
Okay.
You called the poetry the what?
The Babylon Report.
Babylon Report. Okay.
And it started kind of looking at history and colonialism and how religion and things like that really kind of influenced a lot of different things. And then I started, and it sounds kind of cliche, but it was really important to me at the time to like make this weird jump as far as like what I was interested in.
Right.
And I started looking at that through more of a heavy metal lens. And I started creating like these weird historical images that definitely look like heavy metal covers. That pretty much is where I've been probably for the last 17 years.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. It's kind of evolved here and there based on different projects that people have asked me to be involved with and things like that. But that was the Kickstarter for me to like, I wasn't working figuratively at the time. I wasn't doing these images that people could reference as a real place.
Right.
But it made me start kind of thinking about things in a different way. Visually, and it was kind of fun. I mean, that was the thing that was kind of fun to me, is like I started going back and looking at like Frazetta and thinking like, oh shit, I see shit in Frazetta that I
never saw.
I would have blown off thinking that it was like something else, or something else. And not that I'm giving, I mean, I love Frazetta, but I wasn't looking at it before as like high art. But I was looking at it now as these images that were kind of interesting, but I wasn't doing Frazetta art by any means.
Yeah.
Just like, wow, okay, so this is what I'm interested in now. And I started looking at old creepy magazines and eerie magazines. Like these guys that were out of like Brazil that were doing like these completely psychedelic comic books and stuff. And I was just like, holy shit. And I basically took everything that I thought about high art, which I never really embraced anyway.
Right.
And I basically just fucking threw it out the window. It was really refreshing.
Yeah. Now let's say it's just, and all quiet, just thinking about that, even, back when I was a kid, and I've always had, in our background to a certain degree, and this, art was a big love of mine before music even. And it's strange, there's so much of that stuff that I haven't really revisited through a cultural lens. That I was just looking at every, painting or drawing or everything back then just to stand alone, just, what it was. Yeah, I'm going to have to go through some of my old art books now and kind of revisit that at my age now and knowing what I know now.
Right. Find the deeper.
Yeah, find deeper meanings and things besides just the visual representation of what I'm seeing.
And I think some of that comes with age and experience.
Right.
I see things a lot differently than I did when I was a kid.
Sure. Even in music, isn't it wild when you like hear a song that you've known your whole life and you know the lyrics to, but then you get older, you hear it again after a while. And you're like, holy shit, that's what they were talking about.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't thought about that really that way in a lot of ways with visual art, but I need to.
Yeah. No, and like I said, I mean, it wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm going to make fantasy art. It was more like I was going to take elements of that and elements of this and elements of that. And I'm going to do something else with it.
Mm-hmm.
And just that's where it kind of blossomed, I guess, for lack of a better word. And it was fun. And at the time, if anyone would have ever said, well, maybe you should do metal art for covers, I was like, that's not really what I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
But then these bands started approaching me and saying, hey, would you do our cover?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, shit, I'm really into metal.
I guess I could.
And you want my artwork and you like it, yeah, that would be a lot of fun. That would be in a totally different direction than, because before I was always geared towards gallery exhibitions and shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and these bands then started approaching me and like going, hey, would you do our cover? I've been like, okay, what do you want?
Right.
And, you know, fortunately, I've been really pretty lucky. Most of the bands that I've done covers for, they'll be like, what do you want to do?
Oh, yeah.
Or they'll be like, here's kind of a concept we have. What do you want to do? And, yeah, we have no fucking idea.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? And so I'd come up with some ideas, and ultimately we would come to an agreement, and we would do it.
Huh?
Actually, when I was doing a lot of that, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was engaged. I had timelines I had to deal with. It was just good.
You were talking about the exhibit you had, not to give away too much story, but like the back piece, the battle jacket art with
all the colors, the dark.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's
okay. Yeah. So, God, I was trying
not to backpedal too much, but you know.
No, yeah.
Thought it was a cool story.
We live in a storefront here in South St. Louis. I have a gallery, and my studio's down there. And there was a printmaking conference that was coming to town, and I reached out to like Mark Riddick, David Devandria, Eric Roper, all these, Justin Bartlett, all these people that are really well known for doing metal art, and everyone I reached out to said yeah, and almost all the work didn't have any sort of band logo on it or anything like that. It was just strictly about the work. It was all printmaking. I'll admit, I have a good friend of mine that writes for Decibel Magazine, and he was able to persuade them to include that on their website. And we had people coming down from Chicago and shit.
Nice.
And, yeah, Justin Bartlett. You guys know him?
Yeah, I'm familiar with some of his work. He's about the only one on that list, though. Honestly, that you mentioned that I can say I can put a name to. But yeah.
Okay, he has this really famous image of this like weird fucked up goat, and he was like, "I want to make these giant back patches," and so I hooked up with Holy Mountain Printing. I don't know if you guys know who they are. They're this printing company that. They do a lot of metal T-shirts and stuff like that, and they work with some of the bands I've worked with in the past. Mm-hmm. And he created these 12 giant back patches with this goat, and we took a whole wall and made an upside-down cross on it with these back patches, and they all sold. And he was like, what the fuck? So, I mean, it was a crazy show. It was a great show. But I had patches made even with my Awful Nice logo that said all the colors of the dark on it. And I had all these patches. It was like straight up old school metal kind of shit.
Yeah, looking at your stuff too, just on like your Instagram and things that you have there. Like you mentioned briefly though, you've got a gallery. there. Of course, COVID, I'm sure, fucked with that over the last year to no avail. But man, I really want to get up there and check that shit out.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yep.
You sculpt as well. A lot of the sculptures yours that I saw on your Insta.
Yep, those are all probably what you're looking at is mostly cast sculptures.
Cast and clays. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a kiln in the basement. What I did is I bought a bunch of old action figures from the 60s, and I took them apart and then made molds of all the various and then put them together. And then I've also been taking a lot of this slip cast kind of stuff that your grandma would do and then kind of fucking those up too. So yeah, like I said, my master's is in ceramics, so that's kind of where I tend to go.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I have a pretty strong background in 2D. There was a time pre-COVID and things like that. I mean, COVID really kind of fucked me up in this weird way. You would think, oh, an artist, he can take all this time and he can make stuff and all this stuff. And I was fortunate. I was able to continue to work through the COVID thing. And I would come home and I'd do the dishes and make dinner.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like making.
I hear you though. That's how we all kind of, some of us.
Yeah.
We've talked about that with guests a lot, that it's like there seems to be, just kind of a split, two different kinds of people. Either they use that opportunity just to become super prolific and, well, now I've got this free time to buckle down on my work, or other people were just like, fuck, I have no inspiration because I'm just trying to hang on without, I agree. I'm sort of in that latter camp, with the exception of this podcast, which has been great. Just to have an outlet to talk to people and,
I'm sure.
It's
been, kind of a lifesaver for me.
Yeah. Saving grace, just be able to keep conversations and hang out with folks and meet folks you never have when otherwise that'd be impossible.
As a coincidence, a guy that used to live about a block up the street from me, he used to store his motorcycle in my garage. He's an artist, and it was great because we could have art talks and kind of, lean on each other and stuff like that about, not getting stuff done, what we think is bullshit about the art world, blah, 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 blah.
All right.
He was like, I built a motorcycle. And he was like, fuck it.
Nice.
He's like, have you been working? And I said, fuck no. And he's like, I built a motorcycle. He's like, that's what really kept me going. He's like, I didn't care about making art. I didn't care about anything like that. His spouse is a pretty, she's very active in the art scene and stuff like that. And he was like, all I wanted to do is, he turned his studio basically into a shop. And he just basically built this motorcycle from the ground up. I mean, he has the capabilities to do that. He was just like, all I wanted to do is just build this motorcycle. I didn't give a fuck.
I also want to mention Matt. Coby is also the head curator at the Transportation Museum in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love that place, man. Honestly, I thought it was kind of funny. You mentioned the other night, it's like, I've probably seen you there as many times as I've been there, because I love all the museums that are in St. Louis, and that's one that I really dig too.
Well, I'm one of two long-haired freaks that are walking around.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Right.
The other guy, he's the maintenance supervisor. He used to work with me, but now he's doing something else. He's a great dude. He's way younger, so it's really hard for me sometimes to, I don't want to say hold my tongue.
Yeah.
But he's young. Yeah, he's the age of our child. But he's into metal and stuff like that, and which is great. We really bond. Actually, I look at him as a little brother for sure.
Cool. Nice.
Have you listened to Sun much?
I have. My favorite song is that one that goes, ooh, for 6 hours.
Have you seen him live?
No. And I think that would be the better experience. Just kind of that ambient. And I've seen, video of them playing live, but it looks like fun if you're in it,
Wait until it knocks you on your chest until you can't even move.
Right.
I mean, it's not something I throw on all the time.
Right.
They have an album called Black One.
Mm-hmm.
And on the back of the album, it says, for maximum enjoyment, play at maximum volume. And I had these I had a really kick-ass receiver and these really nice audiophile speakers. And they started smoking.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say keyword had.
Yeah, had. Not so much anymore. Yeah. I do like putting them on, though. I mean, as far as ambient, ambient doobie shit, I like that. But, yeah.
Black One is the one I usually tend to go to because it's be a little bit more heavy or whatever. And my speakers literally started smoking.
Wow.
I took them to a speaker repair shop, and they said, "Were you listening to a lot of bass?" Like they were talking about like bass. I said, "Well, kind of." They said the magnet is fused to like something else, and they're like, "There's no way we're ever going to repair these." And so when I saw Sun here, I was standing in line waiting for a beer, and Stephen O'Malley or one of the other dudes was behind me in line, and I said, "Hey, I just wanted to share this with you guys." Told me that for maximum enjoyment, I had to listen to it at maximum volume. And the Black One smoked one. And he was like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, it actually fused my speaker to the magnet." But I was listening to it loud. I mean, it wasn't like I was like playing it. I was like on a Friday night after I'd had a bunch of beers, shit. Right. And it was like, I mean, it was loud. And he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." He's like apologizing and shit. And I'm like, "No,
you shouldn't have listened to us.
He told me. And he thought it was funny. He was like, "I'm so sorry." And I'm like, "No, that's all right. You just ruined my speakers."
Yeah. Sort of like learning that lesson. I've just been trying to learn to play guitar for the last couple of years. It's like, don't say, "Hey, let's see what this amp can do." When you start, just, slowly ramp up to see what your amp will do before you crack and fry it. Mine, I ran a big muff through this little crate, like 12, and it's done. I do have this like tiny honey tone, those like belt sized amps, and I almost want to hook that big muff into it just to see what will happen, because the pedal's bigger than the speaker.
Well, what was crazy is this amp that I bought. Heather bought it for me for my birthday. It was this Onkyo, and it had a really preamp for phono in it, and it cranked, and it was clean as hell. And so I thought, well, I'm going to play a fucking clean Black One through this, and not a good idea.
Not so much.
Back to the shop.
You live, you learn. Right on.
It's funny. He was so apologetic, and I'm like, "Dude, I don't care." I thought he would take it as like a badge of,
be proud of it. Well, he probably will. He just didn't want it to look like a dick, right?
Right.
And probably doesn't know what kind of person you are or how you could react. Like you're getting ready to serve him with a lawsuit.
Here's the bill, asshole.
Let's take it outside. Yeah.
Not at all. Actually, I just thought that they would love it. They heard they fucking melted my speaker.
They probably did.
Yeah.
So what's drawing your interest nowadays? It seems like you just kind of find new interest, and I think that's awesome. I'm just curious what's kind of piquing your curiosity lately.
Well, you were telling me about some St. Louis bands, especially a couple of them. Let's bring those guys up.
Okay.
Fister, I dig. Lion's Daughter. You want to talk about that one a little bit?
Yep. Yeah. It was very fortuitous when we moved here from St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the MySpace days, we were moving here from Tucson, and I kind of wanted to see because by then I was already listening to a lot of metal again, and I was like kind of wanting to know what to expect, I guess, or what would be cool or whatever. And I found this weird MySpace page for this band called Black Troll.
Okay.
And it was the most whacked out synth, drug-laden fucking black metal that I had heard. Like, not ever, but, I was, like, intrigued. And so I contacted them, and we continued to have some sort of dialogue for a good while. and come to find out that it was eventually Kenny from Fister before Fister was together. So we had already struck up a friendship, and then the neighborhood that we live in now has become extremely gentrified. When we first moved here, it wasn't so much, and you had the freaks that lived in the neighborhood. Fortunately, the singer for The Lion's Daughter lived next door, and the guitar player lived next door to us.
Crazy.
And then he lived with some other guys that were all in bands. And I could tell that they were in bands because there was always a van with a trailer behind it and shit like that. This isn't my first rodeo.
Right.
And I knew that they were, bands were staying with them and shit like that. And I went out one day. We had this major snowstorm. And I kept hearing someone shoveling our stoop. And I walked out and I thought, well, fuck, I should probably help them if they're shoveling ours. And there was this guy who was shoveling, and we started shoveling. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm in a band. And I'm like, oh, yeah? And you hear that all the time.
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
And he turned out to be in this band called Live by Mistake. And look him up.
Okay.
They actually toured like the world, like Japan and shit like that. And he's like, hey, I got the CD. I'll give it to you. And then it's kind of like some of those tech bands that were pre-Converge. It was very proggy, very tight, very heavy. And I said, oh, you're in a real band. Next time. And he was living with Rick from Lion's Daughter before Lion's Daughter was the thing. And so I started hanging out with Rick too, because Tony, he was like, dude, our neighbor is fucking rad. Because he was like, shoveling snow. He's like, so who's some of your favorite bands? And I was like, well, I like Neurosis. He's like, fuck, you know Neurosis? And so then I slowly creeped into Rick's inner circle, I guess, for lack of a better word. And they started doing Lion's Daughter. They were all friends with the Fister dudes. So they asked me if I would be interested in doing their first cover. And I did. And that's kind of how I got into the metal scene. And it worked out great because it was a clique that was a clique I was interested in getting involved with. I mean, within the metal scene, there's some stupid cliques.
Right.
And these guys were guys that I wanted to be friends with and work with and things like that. And I'd already been working on these series of drawings called In Their Master's Blood for Days.
Okay.
It was basically a king figure and his minions fighting off a pack of dogs that turned on him. I said, what about this? And I said, what about In Their Master's Blood for Days? And they were like, fuck, dude, that's like pretty hardcore.
That is hardcore.
And it's pretty brutal. And so that was the first cover I did for Fister's Lion Daughter split. Then I did a bunch of covers for Fister after that. And then I did a bunch of covers actually for the Lion's Daughter. And I did a tour T-shirt. Lion's Daughter's now signed to Season of Mist. I mean, so they're not like some fucking shitty band.
Right. Yeah. You sent me that stream of their new show. It's like, wow, that album sounds just amazing. The production on that just sounds amazing.
That's their new kind of thing. The last they put out started dabbling with that weird John Carpenter kind of synthesizer.
Okay. Yeah.
And then they really kind of took it to the next level on this new album. I mean, they're in the new Decibel. I mean, they're going places, but I'm sure it helps that they're signed to Season of Mist.
Right.
And they did another really kick-ass album. I'll send you a link to it with this folk band. And it is totally amazing. They bring these folk elements into like this just like heavy sludge sound. So they're always kind of like reaching out and trying to do different things. But then I there's another band that was from here called Black Fast, and they were on the same label as High on Fire. They're like this blackened thrash, but these guys are just nuts, and they're like young, and they're just full of fire. But now they broke up, and one of the members from Black Fast is now in Lion's Daughter.
Oh, okay.
He's a good friend, and Rick already said this guy is like already like changing the band. And then there's another band from here called Railhazer that I did the artwork from or for. You know, it was good to have these little projects that you know, would like, you know, they would say, hey, can you do some artwork? And it would force me to have a deadline to where I would have to, you know, it would force me to go down to my studio and work for 3 or 4 hours a night in work. The ongoing joke with Heather and I, though, is that I was the artist for their first album.
Right.
Yeah. But the new Lion's Daughter shit, they hooked up with this Belgian couple that, like, I don't remember, John, that if you remember the cover on that, those are nuts, though, man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
At first, I was kind of like a little butthurt that they weren't asking me.
Yeah, right.
Because Rick had always told me I was going to be like their artist.
Mm-hmm.
I realized they needed to move on, and I'm not butthurt anymore.
Yeah.
But at first, I was kind of like, well, you always told me I was going to be your cover art.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And, you know, more power to them because they're doing things, and that's a different stage in their career.
Right. And don't think about it as moving on necessarily, just kind of moving around, you know, because you got to keep things changing up, and you got to keep, you know, give other people opportunities and shit like that, and just change your own shit around every once in a while. Well, maybe they'll come back to you on their next one, you know?
Well, it was funny. They were going on tour, and Rick emailed me, and he's like, hey, I want you to do a concert T-shirt for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this has been years ago. And I said, what do you want? And he's like, I don't care as long as it's fucked up. And so I created this huge eyeball in the middle of the T-shirt where this like weird demon witch is chopping her way through an axe.
Right.
I mean, it's fucked up. And all this like ooze is flying all over and everything. He's like, you want it fucked up? Okay, I'll fuck it up. I mean, I'm not going to get into like some misogynist bullshit or anything like that.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, perfect.
That'll do.
That'll work.
Yeah, my only regret is they didn't print it on baseball jerseys. It would have been a fucking badass baseball jersey.
Where's a good place to like check out some of your shit?
Yeah, let's plug that.
My website is shut down. We hired a guy to do our website, and he used pirated software.
Oh, great.
That's
nice.
thought too. After we paid him a bunch of money for it. So the best place to probably find most of my art at a fingertip is on Instagram at Awful Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on there. I mean, that's what I was browsing through to get familiar with you. Man, of course, I love it all. It's right up my alley. Everybody check that out. So when when this shit cuts loose, is your gallery going to be back open to the public, or is it just something you kind of...
It's never been open to the public.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, it's out of our house.
All right.
And
that makes it hard, doesn't it?
We live in a storefront that was built in 1907. It was originally a bakery.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And we live upstairs, and the downstairs is my studio space. And I converted half of that studio space into a gallery space that had lighting.
Right on.
And so what I typically do is I have kind of what I deem open houses.
Huh.
So if we have a special event, then it might be open like Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday or something like that. I mean, it's pretty punk rock.
Right.
And I have an exhibit and, whatever's going on there, but it's pretty punk rock. I
would love to check that out.
I don't keep it open to the public like on regular hours. And we haven't done anything for probably a couple of years now as far as a gallery space. Because I use the gallery space as my studio space when I need to stretch out in there. And then when we have exhibits, I mean, they're professional looking and things like that. It's not like it's showing stuff in someone's garage by any means. I mean, it's very, very professional. I just don't keep it open to the public.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to get on that list, man.
If you're ever over here, just let me know. And incorporated with my gallery space is a 1-bedroom studio apartment that has its own bathroom and bedroom and refrigerator and all that stuff. And, you know, before this whole pandemic hit, I hosted bands here all the time.
Yeah.
And the different promoters kind of knew that here in town. And, you know, I was pretty particular about who I wanted to stay here. I didn't want to have some idiots staying here.
Right.
But, you know, going back in time, we've hosted a ton of bands that have stayed here. And what was really fun is we hosted an environment that
we gave them food.
Yeah, we gave them food. They'd come over. Like, we had one band play the Friday after Thanksgiving. We did a second Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
You know, and these bands dig that for sure. And that's how you kind of meet people. And we've met some really great friends that have stayed here.
Yeah. Well, I'll bring you dinner, man.
For sure.
Shit, if you're going to do all that, you don't have to make me a Thanksgiving meal. And my wife makes a good Toscana soup, great lasagnas, good Italian food. Bring some of that shit. I'm not Italian, but she's a great cook.
Well, what's funny is, like, a lot of these bands, they'll show up at 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't know, Friday night, be like, fuck, I'm starving. And I'll be like, hey,
yeah, I bet.
I'll find something for you. Because I want to be a good host, you know.
Right? I won't tear out your walls or shoot your TVs or anything. I just want to come see your art and pick your braid somewhere, man. So that'd be great.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, and getting the nickel tour at the Transportation Museum. We hear about some of those artifacts.
Yeah, anytime. Like I said, I've been the curator at the National Museum of Transportation for 14 years. I've actually been there for 14 years. I've been the curator for about 13 to 12 years.
Wow.
Oh.
Yep, that's my day gig, and I can't complain.
No, I bet you there's quite a few stories with that. We'll have to come back around sometime.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, have you back on. We can just bullshit sometimes about other things, too, besides making it interviewee.
Well, I hope this was what you guys were expecting or whatevs.
Oh, absolutely, man. Great story.
We rarely have any set expectations. We just kind of like to see where it's going to go.
Well,
and it went somewhere.
Yeah.
So we accomplished that.
Well, some are great.
Like I said, when I was talking to John, I was like, I don't know what you guys want from some 53-year-old dude about talking about music, but you guys got it.
That's our jam.
It is. That's what we do. We're right there. You know, we just like to talk to people, and you've had an interesting life, man.
Yeah, you're a perfect fit.
Well, good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it any other way.
Yeah.
Nah. Why would you? It seems like it's worked out pretty well.
Yep. You want to hear a funny story? Can I share you a funny story real quick?
What?
So when we were living in Manhattan, I had read in the back of a magazine that Carcass was supposed to be playing in Wichita.
Story.
Heather, this is a good story. So, so you guys know who Carcass is, right?
Yeah.
So I had read in the back of this magazine that Carcass was supposed to be playing in Wichita. And you can never go by whether that's true or false back then.
Right.
You know, and so on a whim, we drove down to Wichita.
Yeah, that's not a short drive from Manhattan.
No, it was about a 2-hour drive. And it was on their Heartworks tour. And we decided, I was very clean cut at the time because of my job and things like that. And I wore a white tennis vest and white tennis shorts with white tennis shoes. And
what could go wrong?
And Heather dressed appropriately like that too.
We were in
And we found out that this Carcass concert was going to be at some biker clubhouse.
Yeah.
Go on.
And so we got there, and I went up to the door and I said, "Is Carcass playing tonight?" And they said, "Yes, they are."
And it was $10.
And
$10.
I said, "Okay, well, we would like to see Carcass." And they said, "Are you sure that you're at the place that you?" And I mean, this is kind of like this weird performance art thing on our part, just to kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I knew who Carcass was. I knew all that shit.
Uh-huh.
And this biker at the door was like, "Are you sure you want to be here?" They're like, "Yeah."
Just trying to look out for you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to be here. We just drove over 2 hours to see Carcass. And he's like, "What?" Yeah, we just drove down to see Carcass. And he was like, "Okay." And he took our money. And there was no seats or anything like that. It was like this weird, like, concrete block building, like, with nothing. They had these, like, folding chairs. And this kid jumped off the chair and completely took my wife to the floor. And
oh, no.
And he was like, "I'm sorry, ma'am."
It's like, that's okay, son.
Yeah.
But that was actually one of the most fun concerts to go to. I mean, I know, we were fucking with him because we didn't look like we should be there and shit like that. We literally looked like Ken and Barbie.
Right.
I think they should figure out, though, if you're asking and the band's name is Carcass,
and
it's not like you're confusing one Barry Manilow with a different Barry Manilow.
Right.
It's at the very least, that. So.
When I told the dude, he was like, "Are you sure you want to be here?" And I said, "Dude, I just drove 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours to be here." Pretty fucking fair.
I thought you guys would appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Especially that man.
But I was wearing like this white, like V-neck tennis vest with like these shorts and like these white canvas tennis shoes.
Yeah.
This whole thing. And I was like, "Yes, we're here to see Carcass."
All you needed was a sweater tied around your neck.
Was everything still white when you got home?
I don't remember. I don't care. That wasn't the point.
I could almost think that would be a work of art in itself, just the after.
Yeah.
I did that with Guar. I made sure to wear white when I went to go see Guar, just to see what would happen to my clothes.
So, have you seen Guar?
Yeah, I met Dave Brocky, too, many years ago. It was really a super nice guy, very smart guy. It was a wonderful show. Got to hang out with him talk for a good long time. That was back at, what was that, Club 124 or whatever on the square in Springfield?
Oh, they actually played Springfield?
Yeah, they did.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised some of the shows that blew through Springfield.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's funny that you know Billy Smith.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He went to college there, so.
Okay, because I know Billy through Matt, the guy who was in Mental Crisis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Casey, yeah.
And Dirt Nap completely appropriated in some ways Germbox.
Gearbox, that's what you're telling me, yeah.
Huh.
But I know Billy. I mean, it's a small scene, and that whole thing. But yeah, I'll send you some more links of some of like if you dug that Quitters Club shit.
Quitters Club, yeah, I really did.
That's pretty fucking heavy, man.
Yeah, I gotta show that for sure.
And the singer for Quitters Club was also the singer for Germbox.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And they opened up for like Fugazi and all sorts of shit. I mean,
you see that. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, Matt has been a very involved person. And as I mentioned earlier, he taught me how to run a band.
Mm-hmm.
Of like going and like sending shit off and doing all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's hardcore, and he and I share death metal links daily.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're both in our 50s.
Hey.
I hope we can continue that. I sure will. I want to see why it stopped now. Shit, I'm getting old enough.
So you're asking me what I listen to now.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with a band called Blood Incantation?
I'm not.
No, I'm not familiar.
They're fucking badass. Another band called Swamp Mold.
Nope, not familiar.
Okay, yeah, I'll send you links.
Now you did tell me, I was sharing a couple with you the other night. You did tell me you'd heard of Dungeon Weed. Did you get a chance to listen to that record?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about that just a minute ago.
Yeah, two-piece group. That's Chris McGrew played drums for a band called Griddle out of San Francisco years ago.
That's worth checking out too.
Yeah, very different genres, but and he works at Wally's Hideout.
The studio.
The studio is one of the head mixers there. Played music a long time. Dimitri Mavra, singer and guitar player for Dungeon Weed. They've got another record coming out very soon. I guess it's cut, isn't it?
I think they're finished with it. They just got to tie up the loose ends.
Put it out.
Well, I dug that shit that you sent from that band from Topeka.
Oh, Unmerciful?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Justin.
Just
a good guy.
Yeah, very nice guy. Just super down to earth. And he's been on the show. Justin Payne, which is his real name. But really super nice guy. I want to have him back on the show. They've got that one. There's another album, Unmercifully Beaten, they did that, I really dug as well. Yeah, they're really fucking good. And the lead singer of that group has a print shop too there in Topeka. Reliant Apparel, that's the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
Do some great print work. They've Kelly Bowers there. Shout out to her. Helped me create some of the t-shirts that we have for the show and things like that. So
yeah, we're always accepting Dandy McCandy designs as kind of our little mascot.
Oh yeah.
If you ever get bored and you want to throw one out, Seven did an awesome one for us. Speaking of,
you sent me Sevens.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've had a couple of. I sketched one, and we've got the one that my kid did a long time ago from the story.
Adam Casto did one.
Adam Casto from Nerd Table did a couple of things, and I just like having. We kind of collect them in all different styles. We think it's great.
Maybe on Saturday afternoon I'll go down and knock one out and send it to you.
That'd be awesome.
Would be awesome. Oh, I'd love that. It's like I said, we can't call it fan art.
No, friend art.
Friend art. But we love just seeing what people's different interpretations of that, incarnations of that mascot will be.
Give you a link to the origin story.
Yeah.
That was crazy. Probably about 17 or 18 years ago, I discovered all these like one band black metal artists.
Oh.
And so I discovered like this Zather and Leviathan and Nort and all this stuff. And that was what really got me back into listening to metal again. That now there's a ton of these one-man black.
Right.
But back then, I was reading about them and I was like, holy shit, one band, one member metal band, and it sounded different. There was just something different about it. And that's what really got me back into listening to metal. Mm-hmm. And I really turned back since. From there, I was just like, you know what? I grew up listening to metal. I listened to metal, and now I'm kind of just listening to metal.
Yeah.
You want to listen to some interesting one-man noise stuff, check out Reptoid.
Reptoid, yes. Jordan Solu, he's a drummer, but he, like, everything that he hooks up on his drums are all triggers that are related to, other instruments and sounds. He also sings while he drums. He's got, like, this gas mask, like, rig that he wears on his face in order to accomplish that. And his just array is crazy. He's been on the show before.
Yeah.
But the name of the record is, and I can send you a link, Worship False Gods, Reptoid. Conan Neutron turned us on to him. He's been on the show. Oh, it's just incredible. He's a one-man act and can carry all that over live. It's not just like, just something that's been pre-recorded. And
right.
He's a mad scientist for sure.
Yeah. If he doesn't like the way a pedal sounds, he'll just fucking take it apart and re-engineer it. And he does all that work as well. It's not just sound engineering. It's hardware engineering.
He figures out how everything works. And just really, yeah.
There was another black metal band that stayed with us. They were touring with this one guy. I just know by his real name, Michael Engel.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing the same thing, and he's creating his own instruments.
Yeah.
where he has like these steel things that are all like mic'd and stuff like that, and it's nutso.
Yeah,
it's nutso. More power to all of that.
Oh yeah. Are you familiar with
that one guy?
That one guy is what he goes by. Yeah, Mike Silverman out of San Francisco. He played. He was in the Deli Creeps around that kind of Bungo Primus era.
Okay.
Back then, a Bay Area music. But yeah, he invented this thing. We've had him. He was like one of our first guests that I wanted to track down for the show and got just a couple guests in.
The Magic Pipe.
And oh man, the Magic Pipe. I mean, it's like he had to have one. He kind of designed and invented itself, but it's sort of this PVC instrument set up on, and it's based on the structure of a standing bass, basically, because that's what his original instrument was. He's played with Tom Waits, it's recorded with a bunch of people, but it's a trigger based, also, and foot pedal based instrument he created, a PVC pipe and all these sort of weird, just structural things. He lost one at one time too, or didn't get stolen.
Yeah.
Had no idea. He had a friend who that he figured out a guy who worked through NASA to help him re-engineer it. It took him years, but yeah, check out that one guy.
Yeah, Frankenstein Brothers, Buckethead project.
Buckethead. Yeah, you did a thing with Buckethead.
Well, I know that like a couple of days ago you posted something about Sleepy Gorilla Time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've been around the same era. Yeah.
And that friend of mine, Matt, who was in mental crisis, he's like, fuck, they were like off the fucking charts.
Oh, I fucking love them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've been trying to get a hold of Nils from the band ever since we started this. And I even know a few people out there are like, yeah, I know him. I'll talk to him. See if like, okay, fingers crossed. That'd be great. But yeah, I love SGM. One of my big all-time favorites.
You know who I saw in Seattle that were really great was Thinking Man's Feller. Do you know who they are?
I don't.
I don't think I do. I don't think I do either.
Thinking Man's Feller 8282, I think is what they're called. And they were part of that whole scene, I think.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Bomb?
Yes. Yeah.
And Bomb, yeah, they all played together.
I hear a fan in the background.
Yeah. To see Bomb back then was just fucking absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of what you just described. That's the only reason I brought that up.
Yeah.
Nice. They must have been passing shoulders.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. It's crazy how much those guys up there, as big of a city as, San Francisco is. So many of them know each other and working around each other in some capacity for years.
Yep.
All right, man. You got to come back on. You absolutely do. And we got to talk some more.
All right.
Shit. And I got to come to St. Louis to come see you, man.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
I really want to see some of that artwork up close and personal.
For sure.
That's how I dig it.
And I can give you the 25-cent tour of the museum.
There you go.
Excellent.
That must be better than the nickel tour.
It is.
But anyway, everybody, you've been listening to Undetermined the podcast with special guest Coby Ellison.
Yes.
Coby, thanks for coming on, man. We had a great time getting to know you, and yeah, some great stories. Everybody have a fantastic week, and hope you enjoyed the show. Please listen, share, all that stuff, and we appreciate you. All right, have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.